Morning, everyone. Welcome to the July 2026 meeting for the Board of Regents. I'll call the meeting to order. And Jasmine, could I ask you to take roll, please?
Yes. Chair Bao,
Here.
Regent Southworth,
Here.
Regent Buchanan,
Here.
Regent Spoon,
Here.
Regent Folkford,
Here.
Regent Hoyer,
Here.
Regent Gronley,
Here.
Commissioner Christian.
Here.
Governor Gianforte is being represented by Manish Bhatt,
Here.
and Superintendent Headland is excused today. A quorum is present. Back to you, Chair Bao.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone. I want to thank the fellow board members for making time to attend this meeting. July in Montana is the most beautiful time of year, as we all know, and all the campuses. So I know how busy you are, and I appreciate you making time to make this a priority on the schedules. In addition, I'd like to thank everyone for your vote of confidence in May. It's an honor to serve as chair of this body. It's an honor to represent Board of Regents and the MUS. And it's an honor to follow in the footsteps of former Chair Regent Buchanan, who did a masterful job. And I admit, and Commissioner Christian and Jasmine can relay that I felt the pressure of living up to the way Regent Buchanan led these meetings. It's really become evident to me over the years that this board, there's a real expectation from taxpayers, lawmakers, students, businesses, that we adapt and change with the environment around us, and that we're proactive about that. And that's what excites me about this board. I'm really confident in the campus leadership, in OCHI, and in the Regents, that we can exceed expectations of students and families, and that we can continue to innovate. And as many of us and most of us at this point were challenged by Governor Gianforte to be agents of change in a direction that advances the MUS, and that addresses the workforce demands of Montana's economy. So I look forward to being a part of that effort, continuing to be part of that effort, helping to drive innovation, strengthen our system with the support of all of you. I'd like to also take a moment to recognize Regent Quindy Gronley to the board, Governor Gianforte's student representative and Regent appointee. Quindy is a 2024 graduate of Glacier High School in Kalispell, where she was a dual, and now is where she was born and raised, and had extraordinarily good grades. I looked up online, and she's a dual degree Doctor of Pharmacy and Master of Business Administration candidate for the University of Montana. She's also getting a certificate of health communications. Very highly recommended. She's a member of the UM Advocates, Presidential Leadership Scholar in the Davidson Honors College, and is the elected student representative on the Western Regional Honors Council Executive Board. Quindy, we're very happy to have you with us. And why don't you tell us a few words about why you applied and what you hope to bring to the board?
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair Bao. My name is Quindy Gronley, and I'm honored to serve as the student regent for the Montana University System. I come to this role with a deep respect for the work that this board does and so much excitement for the year ahead. I have greatly appreciated the warm welcome that I've already received from many of you, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity to learn from your experience. I really look forward to representing Montana students with the care and the preparation that this role deserves. So thank you all. I yield back to the chair.
Thank you so much. Before we jump into the agenda, we do have some new faces on. I'd certainly like to take a moment to introduce Manish Bhatt, Governor Gianforte's recently designated education policy advisor. He has an extensive tax policy background, having been the vice president of state tax policy at the Tax Foundation, and he served on Governor Gianforte's 2024-2025 property tax task force. Thank you for your work on that. As we're all aware, tax policy and education are linked in Montana, and I'm pleased that the governor has tapped Manish for this role. I anticipate that our productive relationship with the executive branch, and I really look forward to working forward with you and your staff at the regular meetings. So please welcome to the meeting. And with that, I think we'll jump into the agenda. I think Commissioner Christian will probably do a little bit more of an intro for President Shin, but I want to personally recognize President Shin for being on board here with his first MUS meeting and only a few days into the job at the University of Montana. That I want to express my excitement and the board's excitement that you're with us today. And with that, we'll jump into the agenda. Today's pretty brief. We've got some staff items, some Emirati tenure faculty items, and we do have an appeal on the agenda. And as always, there'll be time allocated for public comment. First item up is the minutes. So I'll turn to the May 20th meeting minutes. Everyone on the board should have them. Are there any corrections or changes? Seeing that there are no further corrections, I'll approve the minutes as distributed. Now I'll turn it over to Commissioner Christian for the Commissioner's report.
Perfect. Thank you, Chair Bao, and congratulations on your new role. You've certainly been an incredibly accessible and committed member to this board in your other roles, and I'm looking forward to working with you now as the chair. So welcome to that position. I also want to send my thanks to everyone that's here today, especially our board members. I think it's always interesting how often I get asked how much it pays to be a regent. It's always surprising to those asking that it doesn't pay. Maybe we feed you occasionally and provide snacks at the table, but that's about it. So, as the true volunteers on this call, missing a beautiful summer day in Montana, thank you for your service to the state. Very much appreciate your time. It is hard to believe it's already July for some reason. I do hope everyone's had a chance or will find an opportunity to take a little time and enjoy this Montana summer in all its splendor. July is fantastic, Montana fantastic, and summer is part of that season that we all live for. So take a little time to spend with and embrace family, friends. That's certainly my encouragement. I too would like to welcome Regent Gronley to the board. Had an opportunity to visit with her recently, and I want to thank Governor Gianforte for another outstanding appointment. The Montana University system will benefit from Regent Gronley's experience, leadership, and passion to serve students. As many of you know, under our bylaws, the student regent is actually the only board member charged with representing a specific constituency. That, of course, is the students. And I'm confident that Regent Gronley will be a thoughtful and effective voice for students across the MUS. So welcome, Regent Gronley.
Thank you.
I encourage everyone to read the campus reports. They're posted with the agenda. Every time I do, I come away reminded of the remarkable work that's taken place across the university system. What always strikes me is, not any single accomplishment, but the consistency of excellence across our campuses. Time after time, you see students succeeding, faculty advancing, winning awards, winning grants, staff making a difference in the day-to-day lives of our students. Together, they just remind us how strong this Montana University system truly is. And for that, I'm grateful to be a part of it. Since our meeting in May, OCHE has submitted its proposed budget, LRBP priorities, and legislative initiatives, those one-time only initiatives, to the governor's budget office and program planning as they build the governor's budget over this summer. Their budget generally comes out a draft late October and then sort of the final mid-November. We actually met with Director Osmundson and his team, Deputy Director Sassano, Ryan Evans, Ben Turnus, on Tuesday of this week, and we visited in depth about those budget requests. Those are consistent with what we presented to all of you at the May meeting. I always appreciate the time and attention and openness of Governor Gianforte's team to support the MUS. You know, of course, we'll have more for you on all these items as we move forward, but that piece is in motion and in progress. Mr. Chair, you certainly alluded to, and yes, thank you. We are proud to welcome Jeremiah Shin. Dr. Jeremiah Shin is the 20th president of the University of Montana for a whole 9 days now. But it's my pleasure to welcome him to the university system officially. Obviously, we've had a meeting that approved that hire, but this is our first chance to interact, and I'm just so thrilled. You know, he brings such a deep commitment to student success over his work, a collaborative leadership style, and a proven record of building those partnerships through his career at Boise State and at Louisiana State. Two very impressive institutions on their own, and so we're delighted to have him here. You know, in just the short time that I've been able to work with him, leading up to and part of this new presidency now, I'm so reinforced every time we visit, and confident that he's the right person and that he's ready to lead the University of Montana with a vision and a purpose and an unwavering commitment to students, which is what we've always been about. And so I just welcome Dr. Shin to the team and to the MUS. I would, if you want to say something, you're welcome to, or you can wave off or whatever, Dr. Shin, but welcome.
I'm going to encourage President Shin to say a few words, because I think one of the issues is that I've had some exposure, but not all the board members have. And I'd like to hear how the first 9 days have been.
I think he's trying. We're not hearing you, or I'm not.
No, nor am I.
Nope, still not. Having spent a little time in that office, when I plugged my laptop in, it doesn't go to the monitor. It goes to the laptop. You might have to switch over there.
Okay.
Yeah, that worked.
Ah, there we go.
That's scary, my familiarity with that. I wish I could take that back.
Okay. You can hear me though.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, President Shin, go ahead.
Good. Thank you. First, let me say how grateful I am to be part of the MUS team. I've received the warmest Montana welcome, and I couldn't be more proud to be a Montanan. I couldn't be more optimistic about what's possible for this state when its universities work together in service of it. I'm beginning day number 5 here at UM. I know where to park, I know how to print, and I have a Grizz card. And so now I'm really eager to dive into the opportunities and challenges ahead in service to our students and to the state. So thank you again for the warm welcome. I couldn't be happier to be here.
Welcome.
Thank you,
it's great
President
to have
Shin.
you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Okay, we'll move on now to the consent items on the agenda.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? We do have a few more introductions. If I could, I would.
Oh, sorry, Clay.
No, you're good. You're good. I'll just turn to those. Actually, we've got you live and mic'd up now. President Shin, I know you have an introduction of a new hire there. If you want to start with that, we'll hand the mic back to you.
Sure. I'd like to mention 2 appointments that I think are going to make our university stronger. The first is Dave Kuntz, who started as the Vice President for Marketing and Communications on July 1st. Many of you know Dave as he's worked at UM since 2020, most recently as UM's Senior Director of Strategic Communication. In this new role, Dave will oversee UM's marketing and communications sector, which also includes government affairs, the Broadcast Media Center, alumni, trademarks and licensing, and brand strategy and experience. Dave brings a wide array of experience to this role, having worked in communications roles across the state of Montana and in Washington, D.C. And something really great about Dave is he's a 2-time UM graduate who hails from Central Montana. He describes himself as the product of grain farmers, copper mill workers, and public school teachers. This background, combined with his wealth of knowledge and volunteer experience, makes him skilled at understanding and communicating to the people who call Montana home. So we welcome Dave to the team. The second is Lauren Fern, who started as the Missoula College interim dean on July 1st. Since arriving here in 2003, Lauren has served the institution in a variety of capacities. Being beloved by students for her work in the classroom, she has served as the department chair of Applied Arts and Sciences, math discipline lead, Ed Ready coordinator, student success coordinator of general education, interim associate dean in the Missoula College Dean's Office. So she's done a lot of work here. At the system level, Lauren is the chair of the MUS Math Pathways Task Force, the Developmental Education Steering Committee, and the MUS Placement Policy Committee. And something really great about Lauren, she's passionate about the work and the mission of Missoula College and the promise that it holds for our students. Combine this with her incredible energy and determination, and we can expect great things of what she'll accomplish in this role. So welcome to Lauren, welcome to Dave.
Thank you for that. Welcome, Lauren. Welcome, Dave. Now I would ask if she's on there. If not, we could promote Chancellor Aiken to make a few introductions from Western.
Good morning, everyone. I just briefly want to let everyone know that we do now have an interim provost, Dr. Eric Wright, who has been a longtime math faculty member here at the University of Montana Western, will be serving for the next year as we run a national search for a provost. And then we've also appointed interim dean of strategic initiatives, Dr. Hillary Risser, who is math faculty at Montana Tech. So we appreciate the affiliation, being able to work together to provide a qualified and outstanding individual to fill that interim role as we continue to fill out our executive committee. Both Eric and Hillary happen to be math faculty, and Lauren Fern is as well. So I just want to assure everyone that math is still in good hands across the MUS. But I appreciate everyone's willingness to step up and serve in interim roles in the meantime. Thank you.
Thanks, Chancellor Aiken.
Perfect. Yep. Thanks. And welcome, Eric and Hillary, to those roles. Mr. Chair, I think that does conclude our commissioner's report, and we're ready to move on to the items on your agenda. Thank you, sir.
Great. Thanks, Commissioner. All right, on to the consent items on the agenda. Everyone has had the opportunity to review the consent agenda items. Are there any items any regent would like to remove off the consent agenda? Seeing none and hearing none, I will entertain a motion to approve items A through I on the consent agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Regent Buchanan. Is there any discussion from members of the board? Is there any discussion from campuses? Is there any public comment? Seeing no further comment, I will call for the vote. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you, everyone. Now we'll move on to the action items. I'll turn it over to our Chief Legal Counsel, Allie Bovingdon, to present the policy revisions in action item A.
Good morning, Commissioner and Chair Bao and members of the board. It is a beautiful July morning. This item is part of our annual policy review. OCHI staff is recommending a number of updates for the board that will modernize our policies and reflect best practices and organizational updates. I'll briefly summarize these proposed changes, and we've got the subject matter experts on the OCHI team here as well to provide more detail if there are questions about these. We are proposing to amend policy 301. It would update our admission standards for students who are homeschooled to reflect campus practices of allowing the GED or HiSET to satisfy the high school equivalency assessment and admission. We are proposing updates to policy 713.1 and 713.2. These both reflect, they would update current policies to reflect the organizational change that was approved by the board in your January meeting to authorize the election of the state fund for workers' compensation coverage. So that will happen in July, but prior to that, we were self-insured. And so they don't change anything substantively about the policies or what we're doing. They just reflect that change. Policies 940.9.2 and 1000.3. These will update the threshold amounts for the approval of construction by the commissioner. Right now, the commissioner can approve up to $500,000 in construction. This would change that number threshold to up to 1 million. Or the president or chancellor, who currently has the authority to approve construction projects up to $100,000, and this would change it to $250,000. These updates don't delegate any new authority to the commissioner or to presidents or chancellors. They simply modernize our threshold limits to better reflect construction costs and inflation that has occurred over the last decade or so, and will allow for effective project management on our campuses. The changes to policy 1004.1 are proposed changes to the naming of buildings. These updates to the naming policies really reflect national best practices around honorific naming rights and clarify definitions in terms of useful life, contract that grants naming rights for a specific term, and specifically saying that naming in perpetuity is not allowed unless there are exceptional circumstances that are approved by the board. The changes will also streamline the public comment process at the campus level. And then finally, there's proposed changes to 940.13, which is our tuition waiver and discount policy. And I'm going to turn that over to Deputy Commissioner Trevor to give a little brief explanation.
Thanks, Ally. Mr. Chair, members of the board, 940.13 tuition waiver and discount policy is basically split into two hemispheres. One is it describes the mandatory waivers that the Board of Regents are prescribed to the campuses to offer, such as American Indian waiver, MUS honors, veterans waivers, and so forth. And we do a great job in this policy of detailing those. The second half of the hemisphere are discretionary waivers. The campuses can offer under their own discretion. In this area, we haven't done such a great job of explaining the details, and that's what this change does. It simply creates a list on page 3 of those allowable discretionary waivers to clarify and to better articulate the campuses. Mr. Chair.
And
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, with that summarizes the 7 individual policy items that would be amended under this proposed item.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Do we have any questions or comments from the board on any of these items for Ally or for Tyler? I'll entertain a motion to approve action item A on the agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Regent Hoyer. Any discussion from the members of the board? Is there any discussion from campuses? Is there any public comment? Seeing no further comment, I will call for the vote. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Thank you. The motion passes unanimously. Moving on, Deputy Commissioner Joe Teal will present action item B.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, here with an academic item, and this deserves a little bit of back context. So currently, around the state of Montana, state government, private partners hard at work at deploying about $1 billion in investment into broadband infrastructure. Last year, the university system, led through a grant by Highlands College in partnership with Flathead Valley and Missoula College, received $6 million to expand broadband training. So to fill the workforce need necessary to deploy those $1 billion of investment well. Across those campuses, they've been coordinating on short-term pathways to get trained and out in the field while working on broadband infrastructure. That includes short-term programs in fiber splicing, broadband, heavy equipment. What's in front of you today, all those other programs are 6 months to a year. This would be an Associate of Applied Science in Heavy Equipment Operation and Maintenance. So the 2-year complement to allow folks who've gone through those programs to continue on to that associate's degree. So those certificate programs are launching this fall. The plan would be for this program to launch in 2027. 2 exciting points to note. First, this has also been done in coordination and part of a deepening partnership between Montana Tech and Montana Resources in Butte. And second, all of the startup costs, equipment costs of the program will be provided by the grant. Happy to open if there are any questions.
Thank you, Joe. I don't have any initial questions. I'll entertain a motion to approve action item. I think this is action item B. Is there? Sorry.
So moved. This is Regent Folkvord.
Oh, thanks. Thanks, Regent Folkvord. Moved by Regent Folkvord. Is there discussion from members of the board? Is there discussion from campuses? Is there any public comment? Seeing no further comment, I will call for the vote. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Deputy Commissioner Teal, it's still your platform. Please continue and present on to the next item. Thank you.
Chair Bao, thank you. Members of the board, bringing this item for you for an anticipated vote in September. Something we don't talk about often is that this board, through OCHI, is first in line for student consumer protection in the state of Montana. So when it comes to higher education institutions operating in the state and recourses for students who might be harmed by a bad actor, that operates through this policy. And it's a requirement both under state statute for this board and the commissioner's office, as well as through federal regulation. So we have to have a process for Montana institutions to get authorized if they're going to participate in Title IV federal financial aid. And what we've noted is that our existing policies pretty far out of line of what's expected in national norms on the student consumer protection front. That's concerning because we don't want to be a port of call for degree mills, and we also want to have a good outline of if something goes awry in a student's education or if something goes awry with a college or university, what are the adequate protections that we need to provide for students so that they can continue their education. I will say Deputy Legal Counsel Hannah Tokarud has carried the water on this one and done an excellent job. I'm going to turn it over to her to talk through some of the changes in more detail. But just in terms of principles, we've wanted to come closer to what national best practice is in this area. We did an audit of peer states across the country and how they approached this topic. But to do it in a way that's pushing with the grain of what's expected of colleges and universities around the country so that we're not adding substantially to their burdens to obtain this authorization. With that, I'll turn it over to Hannah.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Chair, members of the board, and Commissioner for having us here today to walk through this. As you'll note when you look at these policy revisions, this is a comprehensive rewrite. As Joe shared, we had concerns about our current policy failing to adequately protect students and being an outlier in terms of current best practices. And this updated policy would bring us more in line with other states' regulatory structures. And as Joe mentioned, we were looking at how other states handle this in their policies when we were thinking about what we want to do in Montana. I'm going to walk through some of the major changes to Board Policy 221. So one is that we explicitly say when authorization is required. So this is for institutions that are domiciled in Montana that have a physical presence here. It's also for institutions that are in another state or out of the country but are seeking to offer education to students in Montana. And we have explicitly said that you can't offer that degree unless you're authorized, and you also can't advertise or solicit students here without authorization. The policy as revised would establish a structure with different categories of institutions. So the first category would be institutions who are automatically authorized. The second would be institutions who are exempt from authorization under the policy. And the third category would be institutions that have to apply for authorization. So the first category is those that are automatically authorized. Those are listed in the proposed policy, and that includes the units of the MUS, the Montana Community Colleges, tribal colleges, and institutions that are domiciled outside of Montana that participate in something called the State Authorization Reciprocity Agreement. I do want to pause here for a minute to explain what that agreement is, since it informs this type of work. So the State Authorization Reciprocity Agreement, or SARA, because we love acronyms in higher ed, was established in 2013 to allow students to more easily access distance education across state lines and to improve the quality of those distance education programs nationwide. So it's an agreement that Montana, along with 48 other states and various US territories, has entered into. And essentially, if a home state approves an institution that is in that state, then these other member states will recognize the institution as authorized. So I just wanted to explain that, because as you're looking at these proposed revisions, you'll see reference to SARA. So the new policy would require a school that is domiciled in a SARA member state to be a SARA participant in order to be authorized in Montana. The second category that I mentioned was those institutions that are exempt from the policy. This is the same list that we have in our current policy that includes flight schools, schools of cosmetology, and religious institutions. So we've kept those same categories. We've just cleaned up our language around the religious exemption to make it more straightforward. And that is certainly the largest category of exempt institutions that we have. And then the third category, as I mentioned, is those that have to apply for authorization. So in the revised policy, we've set out what those requirements for authorization would be, what the process would be, and we've added an appeal process. So if an institution is denied participation, then they would have the opportunity to appeal. The other changes that I'll highlight, I think, are in line with what Joe said of trying to beef up our consumer protection. Under the current policy, only certain institutions are required to submit a surety bond, and that is capped at $10,000. So under the revised policy, all institutions would submit a bond, and the amount of the bond would be based on the institution's gross Montana revenue. We've also set out explicit consumer protections that institutions must follow, for example, providing truthful information in marketing and enrollment materials, and having information about their complaint process on their website. We've added notification requirements both to students and to OCHI. For example, if an institution has an adverse action by an accreditor or has a change of ownership, they would have to notify OCHI. And then we've beefed up our explanation of the student complaint process and the enforcement actions that OCHI might take. So that's a very broad overview of the proposed changes to 221. As part of this rewrite, we have also drafted a new proposed policy that would be specific to application for Montana institutions that are seeking to participate in SARA, the State Authorization Reciprocity Agreement. So we would have a new policy setting out what those documents are that are required for application. We would allow OCHI to administer a fee for processing the applications and then have a process for appeals for institutions who are denied. In our current policy, we have one sentence that addresses this process. So we thought that it was worth having a lot more detail there. So that is the host of proposed changes, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thanks so much.
Mr. Chair, if I could, just a couple comments. First of all, we don't do too many rewrites, as you saw in the last one. If we're changing a few nuances to a policy, fine. When we are kind of revamping a policy or rewriting one, we generally go through this two-step process. So that's why you see it here. That gives people around the community a chance to communicate with us between meetings if they have questions, concerns. I guess quite honestly, I've asked our group to take a look at this. I think we are an outlier. I think we're always careful to, we're encouraging businesses to do business in Montana, and we always want to support that effort. At the same time, institutions are failing across the country at an alarming rate. And I think rightfully so, students, parents, payers are asking, where's the oversight? Where's the board? And so I think getting us more in line with what's happening across the country, so we're not attracting those that are just looking for the easy route, but instead we're consistent with our neighbors. I think this is a real good move, a smart move. And obviously we'll bring this back in September, but wanted to get it in front of you all now for questions if you have any, but also the larger community so they can respond to us if there's questions.
So Commissioner, I think if I understand this issue and paraphrase it a little bit, really what we remain open for business, for educational businesses and opportunities for Montanans that are legitimate. But there's an element of consumer protection here that we're also saying we need to be a little more prepared for some of the scam situations that have developed around the country, and we're gonna balance those two issues with this process. Is that a fair, simplistic way to think about this?
I think that's very accurate, and we're going to stay in the middle of the road. We're not trying to be overly restrictive. We just don't want to be where we're encouraging bad actors into Montana because we have an easier path than those around us. So we're not putting up obstacles here. I think we're truly just making certain that we're consistent with best practice and that we're monitoring this as we're charged to do. Under the federal guidelines, that we're allowing welcoming appropriate people into Montana to do business. You're spot on, Mr. Chair.
And I'll remind the board that this is informational, so we're not taking any action on this today. That'll be at a future board meeting. So if anyone has further questions, we can address them now, but there's also plenty of time to reflect and ask the commissioner's office or to bring issues up at the next board meeting, as we've all done more research on this, if there's any concerns. If there are not any further questions or comments on this item from the board, we will move to the appeal. The next item on our agenda is consideration of an appeal. You've received the commissioner's decision and the written appeal with supporting documents submitted by the campus and the appellant. The issue before the board for the appeal is whether to consider the appeal at a later meeting. Our appeal policy does not require us to accept an appeal if we are satisfied with the commissioner's review and decision. The sole question is whether any regent believes the issues addressed in the commissioner's decision need further review by the board. If you do not wish to hear the appeal at the board level, it is not necessary to make a motion. The lack of action on our part will signify our decision not to hear the case. The appeal is confidential, And I remind the board that we will not address the individual involved by name, identify the campus involved, or discuss the facts or the specific issues. Are there any general questions about this procedure before we consider the appeal? Hearing no questions, I will entertain a motion to hear the appeal before the board. If you wish to move the appeal, please do not name the appellant. There being no motion to hear the appeal, the appellant's request that we entertain this appeal is denied. The commissioner's decision in the appeal is upheld. And next, we'll move to public comment. As always, this is a public meeting. Public comment may be offered on items on this meeting's agenda or on any matter not on the agenda, but under the jurisdiction of the Board of Regents. Written public comment may be sent to Jasmine Casanovas at jcasanovas@montana.edu. To allow us, as always, if anyone chooses to speak by comment, your time will be limited to 3 minutes. Do we have any public comment? And I'll give a few moments, Jasmine, for you to check the system.
Thank you, Chair Bao. We do have one public comment. Deborah, I will allow you to unmute and please provide your comment.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to comment on the proposed revisions to the Board of Regents Policy 221. I am Deborah Cattell. I am from Great Falls, and I am the interim academic dean at the University of Providence. The policy purpose of consumer protection is certainly laudable. However, there may be some unintended consequences of this policy as it is currently promulgated. Montana has had a proud history of student choice through private nonprofit, faith-based and faith-influenced institutions. Rocky Mountain College began in 1878, Carroll College in 1909, and the University of Providence in 1932. All have substantial campuses, buildings, and facilities in the state. They all have a proud history of graduating thousands of students who went on to successful careers. These institutions are now subject to application for direct authorization to continue their proud tradition of offering students a college education. The authorization rules and exceptions are not clear, nor are the weights given for each of the rules. Certainly, losing regional accreditation would have greater merit than an institution that might not have a clearly articulated process for resolution of student complaints. The requirement for direct authorization requires a composite score, a minimum of 1.5, and yet SARA policy allows for a flexibility if a school is between 1 and 1.49, and they can approve with conditions or approve with continued monitoring. This flexibility is not clear under the proposed policy. Under enforcement, it sets out actions taken such as impositions of conditional authorization with specific conditions and timelines, but gives no guidance as to the time or types of remediation allowed. I ask that prior to enacting this policy, the Board of Regents convene an advisory committee made up of Montana's existing private higher educational institutions to receive input before implementation.
Nope, we went out.
Thank you, Deborah, for your comments. Is there any additional public comment?
Chair Bao, I do not see any additional public comment.
Seeing there's no additional public comment, I thank everyone for our participation today. Please go out and enjoy a great Montana summer. We are adjourned.
Thanks, everyone.